Good evening, dear friends. Recently, I was again reading a statement of Abdul Baha, and I realized that in my previous readings I had not paid the necessary attention to its significance. And the more I read that statement, the more puzzled I became. And I decided that this is something that we need to reflect on together. The statement that I read was this. It says, that which is the cause of everlasting life, eternal honor, universal enlightenment, real salvation, and prosperity is first of all the knowledge of God. Second comes the love of God. In truth, the fruit of human existence is the love of God. So, in this statement, Abdul Baha says that everlasting life, eternal honor, universal enlightenment, real salvation, and real prosperity, all of them can happen only if we have knowledge of God first, and love of God second. So I asked myself the question, how? How these are related to each other. First of all, what is knowledge of God? And what is love of God? Even before that, what is knowledge? And what is love? And then what is knowledge of God? Then the question is, what is God? And then love of God. And how they give us everlasting life, eternal honor. These are serious issues, you know. Imagine if we all had everlasting life. Imagine. We had eternal honor. We were the cause of universal enlightenment. We were subject to real salvation and had real prosperity. These are really serious issues, you know. And it requires a little bit of reflection on our part. And I thought that few of the sessions together we would spend reflecting on some of the aspects of this statement. First of all, a little historical background. Between 1904 and 1906, the period where Abdul Baha was a prisoner of the Ottoman Empire and was in Akka, now in Israel. He began, even before that, he began to receive a number of new believers from the West, primarily from North America. And these new believers were primarily women. And a good number of them were extremely outstanding in many ways, outstanding in their personal capacities, in the wealth that they had, in the knowledge of the society, in their philanthropic activities, and so forth. So Abdu'l-Baha began to receive these individuals who would come, imagined at that time, coming to the Ottoman Empire in that part of the world through Egypt and then coming to Haifa and then going to Akka. It was a very unusual process, and they traveled by ship, and they all would come. One of them was Laura Clifford Barney. Laura Clifford Barney, who after she got married, she was Laura Dreyfus Barney, because she married a prominent Frenchman, Baha'i, Hippolyte Dreyfus. And Laura was the daughter of a very prominent family in the United States. Her father was very rich in industrial field. Her mother was an artist and very accomplished artist and painter. And they were people of wealth and influence. And Laura came across the Baha'i faith and became Baha'i. And she was on fire. And several times, between 1904 and 1906, she traveled to Israel. And also later, she was, in fact, with her husband, was in Israel in 1921, the last time, a few months before Abdu'l-Baha passed away. Now, Laura Clifford Barney was extremely brilliant, a brilliant woman. She learned Farsi, and she became very good at it. And during her trips, began to ask questions of Abdu'l-Baha. And usually those questions were at the lunchtime or dinner time. And Abdu'l-Baha would serve his guests and also would answer the questions. And later these questions and answers were published in the form of a book which is called Some Answered Questions. The last question that Laura Barney asked is this. She said, those who are blessed with good actions and universal benevolence, who have praiseworthy characteristics, who act with love and kindness towards all creatures, who care for the poor, and who strive to establish universal peace. What need have they of the divine teachings, of which they think indeed that they are independent? Isn't that an interesting question? Those people who do all the good things, why they need a divine revelation? Why they need religion? Because they are doing all of the good things that religion asks them to do. And they think they're independent from religion. And this is the issue that I think is common in the world today. I think majority of educated, enlightened, modern people would say exactly this. Why do I need a religion? I'm a good person, do good things. I'm humanitarian, take care of people, take care of everybody, give of my time and money and capacities. Why do I need a religion? Okay. What is, she furthermore asked, what is the conditions of these people? Okay. So that was the question. Abdul-Baha said, know thou that such actions, such efforts, and such words are praiseworthy and approved. Okay, that's first. And are the glory of humanity. But these actions alone are not sufficient. They are a body of the greatest loveliness, but without spirit. Know that which is the cause of everlasting life, eternal honor, universal enlightenment, and real salvation and prosperity is first of all the knowledge of God, and then he goes on to talk about knowledge of God. And second is love of God. So Abdul-Baha says, why these things are all excellent and they are praiseworthy. For human beings, they are not sufficient. Okay? They are not sufficient. So we have to understand how. How and why they are not sufficient. So this is the purpose of us being together for a while, tonight and later. About the knowledge of God, Abdul-Baha goes on to say, that which is the cause of everlasting life, eternal honor, universal enlightenment, real salvation and prosperity is, first of all, knowledge of God. It is known that the knowledge of God is beyond all knowledge. And it is the greatest glory of the human world. For in the existing knowledge of the reality of things, there is material advantage, and through it outward civilization progress. But the knowledge of God is the cause of spiritual progress and attraction. And through it, the perceptions of truth, the exaltation of humanity, divine civilization, righteousness of morals, and illumination are obtained. So, what Abdul-Baha says is that here is talking about human reality. That human reality is as such that we can progress in two levels, in two ways. One is the progress in the terms of civilization, material civilization. And he, in other places in the same book, he says that the material civilization takes place when we use our rational soul, our mind. And when we use our mind, we do research, we understand things, we develop arts and sciences, we create a civilization that is excellent. However, if this civilization is not combined with spiritual dimensions and attributes, then that civilization can cause deficiencies, can cause violence, can cause inequality, can cause aggression, can cause all the problems that we see around the world today. And the world that we live today is exactly like that. For example, the world of humanity never has been as rich as it is now. But look at the extremes of wealth and poverty. Look at the fact that millions of people go hungry every day. Just think of it. Look at the fact that we now have knowledge of health and treatment of sickness at a level that we never have had before. But in the same world, every day, millions of small children and people die because they don't have the necessary medicine, they don't have enough food, they are in the zones of war, they are subject to guns and violence by gun. It's amazing in a world that has reached to that level of development, we see this level of devastation. Just in every area of life that you look at, we see that material civilization has given progress to humanity and at the same time has become the object of abuse. Internet is a good example of it, right? What is happening with the internet? This magnificent tool that we have has become the tool of enormous degree of corruption in the world. Just imagine. And goes on and on. When you listen to the news every day, you will see what happens when human civilization is not combined with spiritual civilization. So, having said that, because Abdul Baha says we have to know God in order to prevent abuse of civilization, in order to do that. So we have to reflect a little bit about knowledge of God. And in one of the writings of Baha'u'llah, we come across a very, very, in my mind, frightening statement. And the frightening statement is that to know God, we have to know ourselves. And when I look at myself, I become a little bit troubled, quite a bit. Because, first of all, I don't know myself. Have you ever thought about it? You see, knowledge is a very interesting phenomenon because we cannot know the reality of anything. There is nothing in the world that we can know the reality of it. We don't know the reality of light or of gravity or of matter or of anything. All we know is the attributes of things. We describe things. We say this thing is this way, that way, that way. The light goes that way. It is in a wave. It's in different formats that it expresses itself. But we don't know what is the essence of it. You see, we never know the essence of anything. Only we know the attributes of something. So when it comes to knowing ourselves, the only thing that we can know is our own attributes. For example, we can know the kind of thoughts that we have. But what is the thought, we don't know. But we can say, I'm thinking this way, I'm thinking that way. Emotions. We know that we have emotions. We have a range of emotions. But what is an emotion in reality of it? We don't know. And it goes on, that what we learn about ourselves simply is our own attributes. Which means that we cannot know our own essence. Which means that we cannot know our own essence, we cannot know the essence of God. So when Baha'u'llah said, to know God is to know yourself, means forget it. You are not going to know God. Because you are not going to know yourself, so it's impossible to know God. Okay? So here becomes, on the one hand, Abdul Baha said, the cause of salvation of humanity is to know God. And Baha'u'llah says to know God is to know yourself. And then when you try to know yourself, you realize you cannot know yourself. Which means you cannot know God. Which takes you back to the question, okay, how am I going to know God? Okay. This is a very interesting process. And when we study the writings of the Baha'i faith, we come across this remarkable point that bring to us the fundamental necessity of humility. You know, one of the worst things that has happened to religious people is that religious people become arrogant. They say, I know God, I love God, and we are the best, and we have the right religion, and correct religion, and the true religion, and the best religion. And therefore, we are the greatest. Therefore, we are superior. Wherefore, you see, and wherefore we are allowed to do what we want to do in the name of God. The whole fanaticism that we see in the world, the whole dynamics of what we see right now in Islam, for example, and in the things that are done in the name of religion around the world. All of them, when you look at them, you see that these people, they really think they know God. And they know what is the will of God. And therefore they are the agents of God in this world. And therefore they have the right to do what they do. And here you come in the writings of the Baha'i faith, and they say that the door to the knowledge of God is totally closed to us. It is impossible for us to know God. The only thing that we can know is the knowledge of attributes of God. Okay? So that's one part of the process. But there is another issue here about knowing. Abdul Baha, in the same book of Some Answered Questions, says that there are 4 ways that we know things. The first way which he said is now the most common way among the scientists of the West and now all over the world, is through senses. He says the first way that we can know things is through our 5 senses that we have, which is the foundation of materialistic science, that they say what we can measure and what we can see and experience through our senses are reality, and everything else then is put aside. And but the problem is that our senses can make mistakes. And not only that, Abdul-Baha says that with regard to senses, he said, for example, if you are in the desert, you will see water, and when you approach it, it's not water. What's that? Is mirage. It's the desert. But it looks as though it is the water. Okay. Through our senses, we make enormous amount of mistakes. And besides, many animals are much more powerful in some of their senses than we are. And therefore, knowledge through senses is important, but is not sufficient, because we can make mistakes through it. Another way of knowing is through reason and logic. And he said this is the manner and the way that philosophers have used throughout history, ancient philosophers and now. He said, however, reason and logic also doesn't give us the final answer, because the same philosophers use the same procedures of reasoning and come up to different conclusions. And they disagreed with each other. So he said, how could it be a final truth if they are in that situation? The third way that people know, especially in the religious communities, is through tradition, meaning a study of the sacred texts and history of the religion and coming up with conclusions. And he said that one also is subject to problems, because look what religious leaders have done with religious spiritual traditions. They have all disagreed with each other. They have read the same book, the Bible or Torah or Quran or whatever, and they have reached to different conclusions, and they have divided themselves, and they have been at war with each other. So, and these 3 ways of knowing, through senses, through reason and logic, and through tradition, they are the ways that are accessible to human beings. These are the ways that we know things. In the modern materialistic society that we have, tradition is the knowledge that we get through polling and through public announcements and through statistics and through what they say on radio and television and interviews that they have with scientists and so forth. We gather certain superficial information, and that becomes our base of knowledge. And so this is the situation that is happening in our world today. Abdul-Baha said, however, the knowledge that comes from the manifestation of God, from revelation, is a different kind of a knowledge. Human knowledge is the outcome of human search. It is the human mind that searches for answers to the questions. And we come up with certain conclusions. And we constantly modify our understanding, expand our understanding, increase our understanding. That's the way sciences evolve and develop. But this is through a research, through trial and error, through experimentation. He said, however, the revelation, the knowledge of revelation is all-encompassing. In other words, the knowledge of revelation is not through research, is just through knowledge, is a phenomenon that is occasionally we see glimpses in ourselves. For example, if you were out today and the sun was shining, which was, right? You know the sun is shining. You don't need anything to confirm it, to prove it, to disprove it. It is there. That shining is there. That light is there. And you are in the light. And the light encompasses you. The revelation encompasses the whole of reality, the whole creation. The manifestation is the all-knowing in the sense the same that the light is all there. Okay? So the knowledge that comes from the revelation is the statement of realities of things. And this statement of realities of things usually refers to the qualities and attributes of the worlds of existence. And the fundamental relationship that exists between realities of things. Abdul Baha says knowledge, science, is روابط منبعث ضروریه منبعث از حقایق اشیا, means essential relationship emanating from the realities of things. In other words, revelation gives us understanding of the relationships between essential aspects of realities, essential relationships between different things, between human beings, for example. For example, the revelation describes what are the essential relationship in human existence, human conduct. Okay? They describe it. Therefore, when we study the teachings of a religion, we come across the description of those essential روابط ضروریه, essential relationship. And these essential relationships then are described, for example, in the Baha'i faith, the central core of the essential relationships is unity. It is unity that supersedes every other aspect of relationships. All relationships eventually revolve around unity. And therefore, it's not surprising that Baha'u'llah, on the first day that he proclaimed his mission to humanity, which was 21st April, 1863, in Baghdad. The first thing that he enunciated was that the era of conflict and war has ended, and the era of unity has arrived. Everything else in the writings of the Baha'u'llah, everything else, he says, are given to us in order to create a world that is united and peaceful. For that, he said, you need justice, you need equality, you need on and on and on when you read the writings and teachings of the Baha'i faith. So you will see that what happens here is that in order for us to get some understanding of ourselves, we have to understand those essential relationships that exist between us and others, and between different powers that we have within us. And those powers are fundamental. As I have said many times here in our discussions, human soul, human psyche, has three fundamental powers. The power to know, power to love, and the power to choose. These three powers have to be united. We have to understand the essential relationship between our powers. And because human beings are at the crossroad of creation, on the one level we are human, we are animals. We are no different from animals. In many, many, many respects, we are like animals. On the other hand, we have the capacity to become divine, to be spiritualized. We are in that crossroad. And what determines us to be like animal or to transcend the animal, what determines is the manner in which we use our soul. And the power of our soul, of course, is what? Our mind. Our mind is the power of our soul. And therefore, the manner in which we use our mind, we train our mind, we focus our mind, and the issues that we focus on it determines whether we are going to be going towards the animal dimension of our reality or transcend the animal dimension of reality. This is the choice we have. This is the fundamental choice that we have of which one we go. And interesting enough that in our world today, humanity has decided that we will go toward the animal. The whole Darwinian theory, there are two issues about Darwinian theory that we should consider. One is the concept of evolution, which is obviously true. It has happened. But the conclusion that we have reached from the concept of evolution is problematic. We have concluded that because the life of humanity and the life in general on planet Earth has been subject to the laws of evolution, therefore it means that human beings are only animals. That conclusion then has resulted in us to use our mind to develop areas of science such as psychology, sociology, and others in which we have become deterministic, meaning we say everything that we do is because of our animal qualities. because of the laws of evolution. Because the evolution shaped us to be kind. The evolution shapes us to learn gratitude, because gratitude gives you benefit over others to make sure that you live, you survive. Compassion, love, everything becomes not your choice. It becomes you're determined, you're subject to it. You don't have a choice by it, And this determinism has caused the kind of situation in the world in which people, instead of accept responsibility for what they do, they transfer the onus on their nature. They say, well, what can I do? It's my nature, okay? Evolution process made me to do it. In the past, they said, devil made me to do it. Now we say, evolution made me to do it. It doesn't make any difference. It means that we refuse to accept the responsibility, refuse to use our power of one of the powers of the mind, which is the power to choose. We refuse to choose and accept responsibility. Now, this connects us. I'm going a little bit off the line of the discussion that we had. It brings us to issue of belief. And, when we say, I believe something, this means that I have a freedom to think in a certain way. People think that when you say, I believe in something, means that you don't have freedom. But in reality, it is I who decide to believe something. And I can also disbelieve it, right? Therefore, when you say, I believe in the teachings of the Baha'i faith, it means that I have chosen, after reflection and thinking and investigation, to accept certain realities, certain truths, certain teachings to be true. I have chosen to do that. I am free. You see, to believe gives you freedom. When you don't believe, you don't have freedom. But when you decide to believe something, not only you have freedom, but also you have chosen your capacities of search and investigation and so forth to actually choose a direction for your life. So as soon as we believe, as soon as I believe in something, and remember as Baha'is, Baha'u'llah said that the foundations of belief should be independent investigation of the truth, right? So you investigate the truth, and then you believe in it. And now, because you have a free will, you believe in something. And when you believe in something, then it gives you a sense of security. Not believing makes you insecure. But when you believe in something, you feel secure. You feel secure because you know that you have freedom to live your life however you choose. You see? So, when we say, I believe in existence of God, And I believe in the revelation that comes. And I believe in this revelation that has come now by Baha'u'llah. When you do these things, you don't lose your freedom. You actually freely choose to use the powers of your mind and soul in a certain way. And in doing so, you shape the pattern of your life. Now, so the process of knowing, we said that we cannot know the essence of anything. We can only know the attributes of things. To know God, the pathway to knowledge of God is knowledge of self, which means that we cannot know God, essence of God. We can only know the attributes of God. In order to know the attributes of God, the only possible way is through the manifestation of God. The life of the manifestations, like Jesus, like Muhammad, like Baha'u'llah. Who they were, how they came to this world, what attributes they gave us, what kind of teachings they give us. And the teachings that they give are not of the same kind of knowledge that we gather together through senses and through other modalities that I described. But rather it is that all-encompassing knowledge of realities, of relationships, essential relationships between realities of things that they describe to us. And through that, we begin to develop certain understanding of laws of existence and relationships that they should take place between the realities of this world. When we do that, we begin not to violate the relationship, the laws that govern relationships. Because when we violate the laws that govern relationships, we bring destruction. I'll give you a few examples. Environmental crisis that we have is because we are violating the laws of material, biological existence that in this world. In human relationships, when we violate the law of truthfulness, or when we violate the law of love, of compassion, when we do that, we destroy that relationship. In everything that is in this life, it revolves around relationships. And therefore, we have to understand the manner in which relationships can be maintained, can be strengthened, and further advanced. And Baha'u'llah says that the fundamental law of relationship that we should understand at this time in history of humanity is the law of unity. Because when we understand the law of unity, then the manner in which we go about life would completely change. So these are some thoughts about knowing and what we can know. Now, I hope that next time, if some of you are back, we talk about loving and the way we love. And then we connect those to the statement of Abdul Baha of how this knowledge of God and love of God can be the cause of eternal life, What is eternal life? What is eternal honor? Everlasting honor. What are these? What is universal enlightenment? What is true prosperity? You see, these are the kind of things that we would want to talk about. But first, I thought it's a good idea to talk about a little bit about some of the elements. And as I talked, I realized how little I know about these things and how much need to be known and understood by us about these issues. But I think for the time being is enough. Okay, dear friend, thank you very much.